Came on the trolley line from Gloversville, wearing my best suit.
Well, now, the power actually goes through the Gazette building next door
Yeah,
to run that trolley line.
yeah.
There's an old panel down there in the basement that's disconnected.
Yeah, I was wearing my good double-breasted suit, which I only had one of. And I was maybe 12 years old, and it was a Sunday, and there was nobody on the streets to speak of. And I walked down to the main gate at GE and spoke to the guard and told him I wanted to work for there sometime. Could I go in and look around? And he kind of gasped, and he said, "Yes." He said, "You can go in and look around, but I don't want you to go in any of the buildings." He said, "You can walk down the main Works Avenue, but I want to be able to look down and see you at any time I look down. And will you do that?" And I said, "Sure." So I walked down quite a ways down Works Avenue on a Sunday afternoon in my best suit, came back out and thanked the guard. So I went back on the trolley. Those trolleys were beautifully maintained. They would run at 60 miles an hour up the valley through Amsterdam to Tribes Hill, to Johnstown, and to Gloversville. And I was convinced that I could drive one if I was allowed, because I studied the operation of the operator of the trolley cars and his air brakes and his signal systems. He had a few signals to operate along the way, and block signals. But they were a pleasant experience. And when the trolley line was abandoned, it was abandoned after another flood like the one we just had last year. It took out the bridges. It took out the old bridge at the end of Washington Avenue that crossed over into Scotia. And the trolleys had been using that. And the bridge was condemned. And while they were getting new buses, they ran the trolley cars only from Scotia to Gloversville. And they had to give up the bullet cars because they were single-ended cars. They couldn't drive them from the other end. They got into Schenectady. They had to go around the park up there at the end of State Street, or they could go down around the GE Loop to turn them, but they couldn't be backed up. And they were an interesting car. Now, when they abandoned the trolley line, they sold the 5 trolley cars, the 5, they called them, trying to think what they had a name for them. Anyhow, they sold the 5 cars to a line out in Salt Lake City that ran from Salt Lake City to Ogden, Utah. About 70 miles straight run north from Salt Lake. So in around 1952, I had purchased a new Oldsmobile, and I took my parents for a sightseeing trip. And among other things, we went to Salt Lake City, and then we went on up to, when we got into Salt Lake City, we saw the sights there. And we inquired about that trolley line, and those cars were still running from Salt Lake to Ogden. So we went down and bought a round-trip ticket from Salt Lake to Ogden, and 70 miles. And the closer we got to Ogden, the slower we went. So I said to the motorman, "What's the problem?" He said, "Well, we had a fire in the powerhouse up in Ogden, So all the DC is coming up from Salt Lake. And the closer we get to Ogden, the more resistance there is in the series, and I can't go any faster. So of course, as we came back down towards Salt Lake, we gained speed. And that was the last year those bullet cars, they called them bullet cars, because they ran so fast like a bullet. That was the last year they ran in Salt Lake. Now, since then, one of them has been restored. It is in the Orange Museum out in Orange, California, a trolley museum.
Yeah, there are several.
Yeah, and I went there one time, and sure enough, there was old number 125, one of the 5 cars that ran from Schenectady to, and it had been restored and was in operable condition. And they were, as I say, they were a nice riding car and quiet and ran at high speed for a trolley. 60 miles an hour was their standard speed down the valley here. Once in a while they'd jump the wire, the trolley pole would jump the wire, and the motorman would have to get out and back and pull the rope, get the thing re-engaged on the wire so we could continue the trip.